I really love this theme. We've been talking, of course, about fearlessness, being fearless this weekend. And of course, we're not talking about the Taylor Swift album and song. Although it is very good, because she danced in a storm in her best dress, fearless. It's beautiful. That's not really what we're talking about, though, right? The mic always works perfect when we're practicing, and not so much right now. Hey, bring it in. Last night we looked at, with Matt, what it means to be fearlessly confident in God. Matt shared some really powerful stories and talked about what it means to be fearlessly confident in God. And tonight, we're going to do something a little bit along those same themes, but building on it. And tonight, honestly, I'll be up front right now. By the end of this message, I'm going to ask you to make a decision to be fearlessly committed to God. And so I want to spend a little bit of time to talk about what it means to make that decision to be fearlessly committed to God, what it means to make a decision to authentically and wholeheartedly follow Jesus, to decide that you're no longer going to be in control, that you're going to let God be in control, to allow Him to work on your life when you're facing the unknown, when you're facing potential failure, right? To allow Him to work in your life when you're unsure of how to react in a situation, when you're afraid of the decisions you'll make. I'll be honest, I get fearful sometimes when I'm speaking because I worry, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to communicate in the right way? Are you guys going to hear what I'm hoping to communicate, right? That we can be fearful sometimes, but part of having this fearless commitment to God is going, I want Jesus by my side so that I can lean on Him even when I don't know where else to go. But that in every situation, I can lean on God to have my fearless commitment to Him, allow Him to work through me and in me and around me. Fearless commitment can be terrifying, but more importantly, it's incredibly rewarding, right? And part of why I believe it's incredibly rewarding is that when God created us, He designed us, He literally wired us to have a relationship with Him. That's why Adam and Eve had this perfect relationship with God before sin. And sin gets in the way, it disrupts that. But there's still a part of us that is longing for that connection with God. There's that part sometimes is like something's missing. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure what's going on. It's because we were designed to have a perfect relationship with God and live this perfect life with God. Now, we're never going to have a perfect life on earth. We'll have that someday in eternity. But we can have that relationship with God. Last night, you'll remember that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, I just like saying their names. There were 4 of the young men taken captive by the Babylonians, by Nebuchadnezzar, and forced to integrate into the Babylonian world. They didn't have a choice in it. There was no part of them that was like, hey, it might be fun to move to Babylon for a few years, take advantage of their education. So, their nation was destroyed, their city was leveled, the temple was demolished, and then Babylon just stole these young men that were kind of the best of the best away from their families, away from everyone. They knew when they were taken captive, they were probably never going to see anyone they knew from back home again. And Nebuchadnezzar, what we need to know about the Babylonians is they worshipped a lot of different false gods, a lot of pagan gods. They had idols, and they had gods for this and gods for that, and they worshipped all these different ones. And as time went on, Nebuchadnezzar decided to make a new one. Some of you might have heard this story, right? But he makes this, he envisions this giant statue of gold. Just this incredible statue. We don't really know what it looked like. It was thousands of years ago, right? We just know that he had this thing made. And after however long it took to complete it, whenever that was, he gathered all of the people together. the leaders and the influencers and the soldiers and all of the most important. He gathered them all together to dedicate this massive golden statue, this massive golden idol. And in Daniel chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar gives instructions to the crowd that makes it clear this is an idol, all right? And here's what is expected of you when we play the music. He goes, then a herald shouted, people of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither. I wonder what a zither is. Does anybody curious what a zither? I don't know. It just sounds cool. I like saying that. The lyre, the pipes, they had an organ. Other musical instruments bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace, which honestly does not sound fun at all. Has anybody ever burnt themselves in something? When I was a little kid, this is 100% my mom's fault. 100%. And she made a horrible decision. She was ironing some clothes when I was like 3 years old, and she was going to leave the room, and she was like, hey, don't touch the iron. Guys, I wasn't thinking about touching the iron. I was playing with toys. Why would I want to touch the iron? Right? Like, I wasn't even paying attention, but she said don't touch the iron. I thought, man, that iron, there's probably something pretty cool about that iron. So I touched the iron and hurt my finger. Like, I got a big old blizzard. It was awful. But that's just, like, this is a blazing furnace. Like, go in, burnt to death. It's awful. Like, it just, that kind of thing just sounds horrific to me. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were three of the men who found themselves in front of this statue. They found themselves having a decision that they had to make, and they knew what was being asked of them contradicted everything they believed in, right? I mean, if the food was a big deal last night, worshiping a giant golden idol is probably a lot worse, right? And so they're faced with this decision, but they knew they believed in the one God, the same God that we worship today, and that in this act they were being threatened to get them to abandon our God. And this wasn't a situation where they had the time to calculate, had time to consult other people. They're like, hey, on this day, Nebuchadnezzar is going to make this crazy ask of us. What do you think we should do? Like, how do we get it? Can we schedule something? Can we be away? Like, how do we? They didn't have any of that, right? They didn't have a situation. It wasn't a situation where they could just try harder or do better. They had to make a decision. Do they worship this statue and get burned to death? Or do they remain committed to the one true God, the God that we follow? And it may seem like an easy decision for us, thousands of years later. Like sometimes we read these things, and it's easy to kind of forget what the real emotions would have been in the moment, what it really would have been like through. Like, I got to be honest, there's a part of me that would be like, is he really going to, like, come on. Is that like when our parents threaten us? If you do this one more time, blah, 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 and then you do it one more time and nothing happens? Like, is that what's going to happen? And some of you are like, not my parents. No, they knew Nebuchadnezzar was for real, right? Because he's already destroyed their home. He's already destroyed their city. He's already destroyed the temple. He's already taken them captive. Most scholars believe they were probably around 17 years old when they were taken captive back to Babylon. Most scholars believe that part of that process to be part of the king's officials and all of that also meant, look, guys, I don't want to be blunt with you, but I'm just trying to level with you at the status of the way their circumstances had gone so far. Most scholars believe the Babylonians probably castrated them as well. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah, I just heard some of the guys are like, oh, some of you don't know what that word is. You know how like sometimes you get a dog and you fix that dog so they can't make any more dogs? That's what happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego But let me remind you, this is a few thousand years ago. There was no great medical system going on, right? There were no great painkillers. There was just a lot of pain. It was like 17-year-old dudes. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I've totally distracted you now with that bit of information. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. Now, when they're standing there hearing this news, this is an empire that has already tortured them in many ways, right? That has already done horrible things to them, physically. They had no doubt, yeah, this is for real. Like in this moment, if I don't bow down, they're going to throw me in that furnace, right? And there had to be a part of them that's going like, does God really want me to die right now? Like my family doesn't want, like hasn't enough horrible things happened to me? Well, the music started playing, and this massive crowd of people just drops to the ground and starts worshiping this statue. Everyone except Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Right? There was no hiding it. They were literally and figuratively standing out. It's just this massive crowd of people, and they're up, and it's like, there was nobody like, I don't know, do you see someone standing? I'm not sure. There's a photo from 1936 taken in Nazi Germany. Some of you might have seen this. This photo has really become famous over the decades. And the reason why, it's not because of what most of the people are doing. This is a massive crowd of just the population giving the Nazi salute. That's not why the photo's famous. Let me zoom in a little bit. Do you guys see it now? I circled it to help out. There's one dude like this. Most scholars believe this is August Landmesser. He's believed to be the man refusing to perform the Nazi salute. Eventually, he would be arrested by the Nazi government because he had an illegal relationship with a Jewish woman. He was in love with a Jewish woman. And so he had this relationship, and her name was Irma Eckler. Because of the relationship with her, they threw him in prison. And once he was in prison, they forced him to be part of what they call a penal military service, where essentially prisoners are forced to serve in the army whether they want to or not. And as this prisoner forced to serve in the army, they put him on the front lines where he was killed. Right? That this was just one step in a chain of events that would eventually result in his death because he refused to go along with what the rest of the crowds were. And so many Nazis in the years after in trials and stuff would be like, I was just following orders. I was just doing what I was told to do. I didn't have a choice. And courts over the decades have been like, no, you had a choice, right? You always had a choice. Well, this guy, he made a different choice than the rest of these crowds. August stood for, and he knew the risks when he refused to go along in these moments, when he refused to comply with the laws about Irma. He knew what was going on, that eventually it could even result in his death. Well, back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Nebuchadnezzar was livid. Absolutely livid. He had the three of them brought to him, and he asked, is it true that you're not willing to bow down to this statue? You realize what this means, right? If you don't bow down, you'll be thrown into the furnace. You're willing to die for this God that you believe in? It's almost like he was trying to give him a way out, right? It's almost like he's like, come on, guys. Let me just make sure you understand what's going on. It's like, here's the phrase I use with my sons when they're making decisions I don't like. I go, you know how this story ends, right? Right? Noah's like, yeah, no, he says that. That's when I think somebody's making a poor decision, an unwise decision, a dumb decision, you might hear me say, hey, you know how this story ends, right? That's my way of saying, like, think how this is going to proceed, right? Because what you do now is going to result in something else. How's this story going to end? So he says that to them. He's essentially going, hey, how's this story going to end, guys? What are you going to do? And their response is just incredible. Because, man, I wish I could say I would be this kind of fearless. I've never been in a situation like this, right? I don't know how I would actually fare in this kind of a moment. These three guys say to King Nebuchadnezzar, who's already destroyed their life in so many ways, they go, if we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, they're like, hey, God might decide it's our time. They go, even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. They were faced with death, and they were willing to stand up against it because of their faith. And I read this, and I'm struck by all of the ways that I can be afraid. All of the ways that fear gets to me. I fear failure. Right? I don't want to fail. I fear not being good enough. I get intimidated sometimes. I wonder, like, am I really going to be able to do this? Am I an imposter trying to convey this image of being able to do more than I actually can? I fear conflict. I hate conflict, man. If I have to have a tough conversation with someone, I will get physically sick to my stomach for the days before it happens. And I used to, when I was younger, that meant I would just avoid the things, and then I would just feel sick for days and days or weeks and weeks. And now at least I'm like, all right, the quickest way I'm going to get this sick feeling over is if I just pull this person aside and have the conversation I don't want to have, right? But I fear conflict. I fear not doing enough. I fear that I'll let Heather down. I'll let my sons down. I fear that I might let you guys down in some way. I fear about getting things wrong about God and faith. There's so many things that I can feel afraid of, and I read a story like this, and I go, there's these three guys confident in who God is, confident that God provides, confident that they're in his hands whether he rescues them or not. Right? They even said, they're like, man, we might burn to death. But that's okay. We're not going to go another way. We're calling this weekend Fearless, but I don't actually think what we're talking about means actually not having fear. Right? I cannot fathom a scenario where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not terrified in those moments. Right? Like, if you really think about it, maybe they were still teenagers, maybe they were in their 20s at this point. Whatever age they were, I think they were still terrified. Right? I think fear is a normal, like, we were literally designed to have fear to protect ourselves from dangerous situations. Right? We're afraid of things for our safety. It's just part of our self-protection. I don't think being fearless means not having fear. Here's what I think it means. I think fearless means not being controlled by your fear. Right? That these guys didn't let their fear stop them from being confident in God. In the way that they were fearlessly confident to Nebuchadnezzar. Right? That they had fearless behavior in spite of the fear that they had to be feeling. Fearless means not being controlled by fear. Well, they tell Nebuchadnezzar this, that they're not going to serve him, and his attitude changed. Right? He was like, hey guys, you know what? No hard feelings. I get it now. No. He got superheated. Pun intended. He was one person One person got it, because of the furnace. He was heated, whatever. He got mad, and it meant the three of them were cooked. Literally. Huh? I use that so much better than Pastor Nate did. Whatever. He's so mad. He tells his people, I want this furnace 7 times hotter than it normally gets. Which is just crazy. Like, they're throwing so much wood. They're just burning everything. What can we throw on this thing? How big can we build this fire? Part of me wishes I could have seen it, because I love a good fire. They're throwing everything in there. He commanded his strongest soldiers in his army to tie them up and throw them into the furnace. I don't know how this was laid out, if the furnace was down below or if they would walk to it and throw them in. However it was, here's how hot he had gotten the furnace. The Bible says that the soldiers that threw them in died, right? The heat killed them. That's how much heat was coming out. So he throws them in. These 3 men who were not willing to let anything get in the way of their faith, who were willing to stand up and take action for the God they believed in, they fall into this blazing furnace. And everybody's just standing by watching what's going on. And then they were amazed. Check this out. In chapter 3, verses 24, it says, But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace? He's like, guys, I've done some crazy stuff in my time, but I am positive it was 3 dudes, right? And they're like, yes, your majesty, we certainly did, they replied. Look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted, I see 4 men unbound walking around in the fire unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. Right? He's looking, and they've already seen the other soldiers die on the way there. So nobody's like, I think it's a fake fire. Right? Like maybe they're in there and it just hasn't gotten to them yet. Right? He's like, I see 4 guys in there, and one of them looks like a son of the gods. Then, verse 26, Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace, which probably wasn't too close since those other dudes died going to it. And he shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God. This guy's tune has changed, right? Suddenly he's like, people that go in furnaces and don't die, yeah, now Nebuchadnezzar's a little scared. Now he's the one who's not so fearless. He's like, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, advisors crowded around them and saw the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. The author of Daniel, make sure you guys knew, look, it wasn't just them that didn't get burned, their clothes didn't burn either, because that stuff should have burnt off immediately, right? Which would have been a really awkward turn in the story. Then it says, they didn't even smell of smoke. Later tonight, we're going to have a bonfire, and as an example, we're going to throw a couple seniors in. No, just kidding. Wow, too far. That was an inappropriate joke. Too far. We're going to cut that out of the video. Here's the deal, man. None of us, to be clear, none of us are going in the fire. This is taking a really weird turn. We're all going to smell like smoke, right? It doesn't matter what happens. By the end of tonight, bring it back. By the end of tonight, we're all smelling like smoke, just because we were in proximity of one. So these guys are looking at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they're like, they don't even smell like smoke. What is going on? And here's the thing. I don't know if it was Jesus that was in the furnace with them. Some people believe that maybe that was Jesus appearing before he came to earth and became a man. Maybe it was an angel that God sent to be with them, to comfort them, to protect them, to guide them while they're in there. Whatever it was, God showed up. Right? That Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego believed that God's amazing and that he's all-powerful, and they believed their faith in God was worth more than anything else in this world, that it was worth standing up to the most powerful person in their lives. They believed that no fear that they might have would get in the way of what God had planned for them. And I think the natural question for us, we're not facing any blazing furnaces. Nobody's forcing us to worship any idols, right? But I think we still need to ask the question, how about you? What's getting in the way of what God has planned for you in your life? What are you afraid of? What fear gets in the way of you having this kind of fearless confidence in God, this kind of fearless commitment to God? And whatever it is, I guarantee you God is bigger than whatever it is that we can be afraid of. God is more powerful. And are you willing to take the steps necessary to address that fear? To be fearless even though you have fear going on. Are you willing to face the blazing furnace, whatever it is that's getting in the way of you having that life that God wants you to have with Him? That life that gives purpose, that life that gives joy, that life that gives direction. Are you willing to face that situation, that blazing furnace, knowing that there's a possibility that it could lead to pain, that it could lead to the unknown? Maybe it'll make you uncomfortable. Whatever it is, are you willing to take action? I mentioned earlier tonight, at the beginning of this message, that tonight is all about making a decision to authentically and wholeheartedly put your life in Jesus' hands. Right? To decide that you're no longer in control, to allow God to work in your life, whatever's going on, whatever you're facing, whether it's the unknown, whether it's the known, whether you're facing potential failure, when you're unsure of how to react in a situation, when you're afraid of the decisions you might make. I want to challenge you to make a decision to fearlessly commit to God. God wants to be your guide. He wants you to lean on Him when you know where to go or when you don't know where to go. Right? That God wants this perfect relationship with each one of us. And you might not be sure what you're feeling. Maybe you're going, yeah, I need to make a decision to have fearless commitment for the first time. Maybe you're sitting there going, like, I've made a decision to follow God, but I feel like lately maybe I haven't had fearless commitment. And what better time than the beginning of the school year to really give that kind of full, fearless commitment to God? We have some amazing volunteer leaders Here's the deal. We have awesome leaders. I was just laughing today at some of the different things our adults were doing so that we could all have an amazing time. I blobbed Kyle. He didn't really have to do that, but he flipped, like, it was wild. You got to see the video. Here's the deal, though. All adult leaders that come out every Wednesday night to small groups, that show up for retreats and go on mission trips with us for it. Legitimately, I think if I added up the hours of what our youth ministry volunteers do in a year between retreats and all-nighters and Wednesday nights and mission trips and meetings outside of church and showing up at games and plays and all the different things they do, I think they might be volunteering more hours than any other ministry in our church. Right? It's not a competition, but I'm saying that to say, yeah, it is. And Matt's like, I'm going to fearlessly win it. Here's the deal. These leaders do all this not because they love tubing or they love blah, I mean, it's fun, but because they want to see you have a relationship with God like they do. That they know it's valuable, they know it's important, it's so worth it to them, and they love you guys so much that they want you to have what they have, and so they volunteer for all these things, and they show up, and they come, and they do things like this weekend because they want you guys to have opportunities like what we're going to have in a moment. I'm going to ask all the youth leaders, all the small group leaders to kind of stand around the sides of the room. Can we turn down the side lights a little bit so it's not quite like glaring spotlights on them? I don't know if they turn down or turn off. Maybe do the post lights. There's a post light. Here's the deal. Bring it back. I lost you guys there for the post lights were perfect. Yes. Here's what's going to happen. Our adult leaders, our small group leaders, are going to stand around the sides of the room. Listen to me. I'm giving you instructions. Bring it back. We can do this. So they're going to stand around the sides. In just a moment, I'm going to invite you guys. Hey, guys, don't do that. Man, I didn't know adults getting up and moving could be so distracting. Here's what I want you to do. I want everyone to go to your small group leaders, and after I say, not yet, and do one of a few things. Hey, middle school dudes. Here's what I want you to do. I want everyone to go to the leaders and take turns. Just go to one of your small group leaders and do one of several things. Maybe you are going, I need to fearlessly commit to God. I want to become a Christian. I want to make a decision. I've been hearing about this weekend, and God's doing something in my heart, and I want to do it. Tell that leader and pray with them, and they'll help you. They'll answer a question or walk you through a prayer to accept Jesus in your heart. Maybe you're going, look, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, but I don't know that I've been having this fearless commitment that we're talking about, and I want to start this school year in a different way. I want to be fearlessly committed to God this year, and so tell your leader, hey, I want to pray with you about being fearlessly committed this year. I want to make a commitment that I'm going to be fearless in pursuing God and doing what God calls me to do. Maybe you're sitting there going, neither of those situations are what I want to do. That's okay. Just leader, hey, can you pray for me over this school year? Right? And they'll pray for your school and your classes and your teachers or whatever it is, but I want everybody to pray. Now, here's the deal. It's going to take a few minutes for everyone to be able to pray, right? And so, as we're doing this, if we could be silent so that those that are praying can have that moment. And once you're done, go back to your seat, but still keep your voices super low, if not just gone, just quiet, so that you're not disrupting someone else's moment with these leaders. Everybody got it? All right, why don't you go ahead and go to your leaders, find your small group leader, pick one of them,